Francis Pickering, followed by Rafi Podolsky, followed by Sam Gold. Mr. Pickering, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for hanging in here with us and welcome. Please proceed.
My pleasure. Thank you to you, Madam Chair, and remaining members of the committee this evening. I'm pleased to be here. Wes Cog opposes Senate Bill 1024 and House Bill 6613. And you've heard a lot of great reasons to support these bills and to oppose them. We do not disagree with the intent of the bills. There are challenges that need to be addressed in the state on housing affordability, in integration for society, racially, ethnically, and economically. But there's some serious problems with these bills that make them unacceptable for us. Number one, you've heard from Daniel Dobin, was that these bills essentially would undermine existing inclusionary zoning regulations that have proved extremely effective. They have a demonstrated track record at creating affordable housing in high-cost areas. The proposals in 1024 have not been tried in Connecticut. So we're looking at proposals that actually work, that are already in place and have resulted in Western Connecticut creating 48% of the new affordable housing units in Connecticut in the last 20 years, 39% of the multifamily housing in Connecticut in the last 10 years, while only having 16% of the population. What we have is working and it's accelerating, and we are very leery of state regulations that would overturn success and really set us back and replace affordable units with market rate units, which means in Western Connecticut, luxury housing. Now that I've talked about that, which you probably heard ad nauseum today, there are several other issues. 1024 would create a new cause of action for aggrieved persons, the Superior Court, that would bypass more accessible, lower cost conflict resolution processes established under state law, including the Zoning Board of Appeals and mediation. It's not clear to us why you have to escalate the state court. That's very unfriendly to users who cannot afford lawyers. 1024 would enable termination of non-conforming uses. A zoning commission can end any non-residential land use, even ones that are still in use. People can move in next door, build houses, and shut down a family farm simply because they don't like the odors by going to the Planning and Zoning Commission. That has never been Connecticut state law. It's terrible for business, terrible for jobs, terrible for the state's economy and its marketing. It would replace level of service calculations, engineering best practice with untested measures such as vehicle miles traveled and vehicle trips generated that do not actually work for analyzing impacts to traffic intersections. It would essentially micromanage what traffic engineers do. We believe this is best left up to the engineers and not dictated by state statutes. It would require water pollution control authorities to reserve capacity for hypothetical multifamily developments. The problem with this is not all facilities have such capacity, and when they do, what if a factory comes along, a job creator comes along? We use our wastewater for many other purposes besides multifamily housing, and intervening in the operations of wastewater facilities could really create burdens for ratepayers and limit options for economic growth unnecessarily. As Betsy Guerra mentioned, it would make some changes to community septic systems. There are a lot of issues with maintenance and management of these systems. Have DPH and DEEP been consulted? We are not aware of that. It would cap parking requirements, including in these central areas around train stations and commercial quarters, at 0 spaces per unit. Now, we know TODs result in less traffic generation, but most TOD residents probably will still have one car for a household because they can't take the train to the grocery store. Where will they put their cars? These are the densest areas of the towns. And last but not least, actually two things. One is it would invalidate local zoning ordinances if they do not comply with the TOD and affordable the accessory dwelling units regulations. Essentially, anything that touches that would become invalid come June 1st, 2022. This kind of nuclear option could have many unintended consequences. And then lastly, while we do support accessory dwelling units, the regulations, I'll wrap up in 3 sentences. The regulations that are here exempt them from the standards that apply to single family homes, such as drinking water potability and adequacy, environmental regulations such as wetlands, flood zones, slopes, sections of the building code with respect to electrical safety, and so on and so forth. And we feel this is unjustified.
Thank you, Mr. Pickering. Senator Champagne, followed by Rep. Beach.
Well, thank you for coming or sticking it out with us. I think you provided more information in that 3 minutes on what's wrong with this bill than anybody in the entire length time so far. Did you have anything else to add? You were running out of time.
Oh, well, sorry to treat you to my motor mouth. I'm kind of revved up being late at night or early in the morning. Our comments are available online. We did submit comments on the other bills, the accessory dwelling bill, 1027 ADU standalone bill, the education bill 1026, we're not opposed to. There's some great concepts in there. 6107, we're not opposed to. We do have some tweaks. And then with 6611, which is the fair share housing bill, we have testimony on. I didn't share that, but I can go into that if you're interested.
I'm interested.
Okay, so 6611 creates a concept of a fair share for each municipality in Connecticut. And we don't think the concept of a fair share is wrong because we know, for instance, jobs are not distributed equally across the state. Some people live closer to jobs than others do. And we think it would be great if every worker could sleep in the same town they work in. Unfortunately, 6611 does not look at opportunity. It looks largely at the wealth of people in a town. What is their income? What's the poverty rate? What's the value of their home? It's largely focused on net equalized ground list per capita, 70% of which is accounted for by the residential ground list in Connecticut. So 3 of the 4 factors they use correlate very highly. And it says, if there are affluent people in this community, we should put less affluent people there under the assumption that will lead to economic progress for the less affluent people. We don't believe that is necessarily the case. For instance, consider the town of Roxbury, a lot of weekend estates for New Yorkers. No jobs, no transit, almost nothing there. There's not much opportunity there if you are somebody who's upwardly mobile. The other issue of 6611 is 2 issues really. One, it creates an extremely complex court oversight procedure that essentially would put every single municipality in Connecticut, except a few large cities, under permanent or ongoing court oversight. It looks like the primary beneficiaries of this would be lawyers. I urge you to read the second half of the bill. It's a lot of legalese, very concerning. But the bigger issue we see is while we appreciate the concept of fair share, the execution is problematic because it says we're going to build a lot of market rate and affordable housing, but we will exclude the communities, the 7 communities with the highest poverty rate in the state. The communities that have the most rundown housing, the most lead paint, the most lead pipes, the most mold, the most leaks, all those problems, we will not give you any money for new home construction. We think that's very inequitable, and there's no money for renovation. It also says we will exclude funding of any census tract that has a poverty rate higher than the average in the state of Connecticut. So in one of my communities, Danbury's worked very hard to bring development back downtown, affordable and market rate housing. It's also a designated enterprise zone by the federal government. We want to reinvest in our downtowns. 6611 would say, no, we're not going to plan for housing in those areas, and we will forbid using state funding for new housing construction in those areas, even though that's where the city wants to redevelop. That's where the TOD is, the transit is, that's where the enterprise zone is. So it really conflicts with a lot of federal, state, and local policies.
Thank you very much. That was very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I keep doing that. Representative Veach.
Am I unmuted? Okay. Madam Chair,